Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hello and a very warm welcome to the Aram training channel. This is all about competitive rowing. Today, I'm going back to 2018, one of the most monumental races, in my humble opinion, in single sculling ever recorded. The Diamond Sculls final of the 2018 Henley Royal Regatta. Now I'm recording this video with friendly permission of Henley Royal Regatta. I want to thank them very much for allowing me to use their footage, and I highly recommend you go and check out the full race video, and I will link it in the description. What is so interesting about this is that it was one of the rare races where there was an overtake just before the finish line. And the second thing is that their technique could not have possibly been more different, yet good. Individually speaking, good in many ways, yet very different. Now, from the perspective of a rower, and from the perspective of somebody who might not be a professional rower, what can you learn? So my idea is to structure this video into three main topics. It's the analysis first, to understand the deeper concepts of technique and different techniques and what they're good for and what they're not good for. I will point out the positives and negatives of each rower and each technique. Now, secondly, I will cue in a sequence of specific strokes where you can see certain aspects that you could try to imitate for your own rowing. And we'll try to make this a 1 or 2 minute sequence that you can try and follow to try to imitate a professional rower, looking for very specific cues that I will give you. Thirdly, I will hop on the bio rower and show you exactly what these technique differences actually result in. What is the difference in stroke length? And what is the difference in force curves? And therefore, what is the difference in actual boat influence? So as usual, I'm trying to look at things from a very scientific point of view. However, down to earth and very much logical, approachable, common sense. Still, I'm not just interested in vague analysis. I'm interested in what does this mean for us? And what can I learn from this? And what can I take away? Let's get right into the video.
Check it out.
Let's start with Mahe Drysdale. He's using a lot of upper body and a lot of upper body weight and a lot of upper body swing, even to a degree where his shoulders actually retract quite a lot. Let's talk about the positives. The list of positives is a pretty long one. His ability to use upper body weight is extremely important when it comes to changing speed and when it comes to sprinting. Upper body weight use is extremely important because, like Tony O'Connor, the legendary coach of the New Zealand Olympic Champion 8 of the Tokyo Olympics, said, if you're tired, you can always use body weight. And he was perfectly right. And Tony O'Connor is not alone. I personally see it exactly the same way, and Tony and I are not the only coaches who see it this way. There are many coaches who share our belief that bodyweight use is probably the essence of rowing. And Mahe Drysdale takes this very far. Maybe too far. We'll talk about this later. The problem with this is when you use upper body weight too much, you do gain speed, but it does cost you a lot of energy. Moving your own body around a lot, and I mean a lot. Here, look at this layback angle. And Mahe Drysdale is not a small chap. Does require a lot of energy. The more you move yourself, the more energy you usually have to expend. So this is a very exhausting rowing style. Another representative of this rowing style is Aram. Although in this video he doesn't seem to use a lot of upper body swing, he's one of the athletes who perfected this. You could see this at the Tokyo Olympics where he pulled off a medal almost last minute. He's using a lot of upper body swing, and the ever so famous final of the Rio Olympics, Diamond against Mahe Drysdale, saw a narrow margin at the finish line in favor of Mahe Drysdale. Drysdale is not the only one to use this. However, it's a rowing style where you need to be pretty careful for the first 1,000 meters, the first 1,200 meters. You have to stay with the pack, but you cannot allow yourself to expend too much energy because every stroke is fast, but every stroke takes a lot out of you. And this may be one of the reasons why Drysdale pulled off his victory just before the finish line. Because this is his style, and I think it's a very typical New Zealand rowing style. Being careful over the first half of the race at least, and then over the second half, winding it up and being almost unbeatable towards the finish line. Some of you may criticize that the roundness of his upper torso is a problem. I personally think that's quite a bit of roundness. However, what it allows him to do is to engage his lats. One of the most important muscles, as we know for rowing, is the latissimus dorsi. It's a muscle that attaches on your upper arm and goes down all the way into your back. It's essentially the muscle designed for rowing. So retracting the shoulders helps you to engage the latissimus dorsi very well. And you see how much the shoulders are protracted at that stage. So team arm training, my athletes, look at this. Of course, this is a lot of shoulder protection, but it is extremely effective. And you see here, there's a stretch. It goes right down there. And I don't think at that stage Drysdale would be tempted to use his delts too much. This is actually a very, very, very good position to transfer. This is almost the perfect position to plant body weight behind the stroke right at the catch. And that is something that is a major difference to Kjetil Borch, but more on this later on. The next thing that is remarkable about Drysdale is the stability of the upper body. And I'm specifically referring to this angle here. If we look at the angle from the hip to the armpit, then we can see that his angle remains the same throughout the entire catch. See this? There's a bit of upper body motion. I think it is largely because his blades simply dig too deep at the catch. Some people are proponents of that. I think there's clear evidence why digging too deep with your blades at the catch is counterproductive. I will talk about this just in a minute. His ability to hold the upper body stable is tremendous. I think one of the reasons why his upper back is bent so heavily might be a lack of pelvic mobility. So simply said, his ability to rotate the pelvis forward wasn't given as much at that stage of his career as it should have been. And this might also be one of the reasons why he had to dig deep with his blades. He simply could not hold it otherwise in the low back. And there is something else that is quite remarkable about Drysdale. At that stage, that's about halfway through the race, Drysdale is still behind. Not far, but he is behind. And I'm sure he's tried a lot. At that stage, he's still behind. At that stage, there's open water. At that stage, he's slowly catching up. Hey, but the finish line is closing in rapidly. At that stage, he's still behind. The finish line is already in sight. He's still not giving up. At that stage, he's got him. Now, yes, Kjetil Borch probably overdid it a bit with his pace, trying to stay in front of him. It could also be that Kjetil Borch had some other reasons why he couldn't hold the pace. It could be that Drysdale picked up his pace massively. I haven't seen the split times. But what I can tell you is that when you're behind in a race, you have to be the worst opponent you could wish for. You have to try everything, and you have to be sure you let everybody else feel if they make the slightest mistake, you got them. You never, ever, ever, ever give up until it's done. There is nothing worse than going easy because you feel or perceive the race is over anyway. You don't know if the guy in front of you has stomach issues. You don't know if they have mental issues and they can't really pull through a race. You don't know if they are afraid of winning. You don't know if they catch 25 crabs over the last 500 because their forearms seize up. You don't know all of that because you don't see this. The only thing you can know for sure is your attitude. And Drysdale, at that stage of his career, he was the Olympic champion of 2016. He could have easily said, it's okay. I've got a family. I've achieved everything I could possibly wish for in a single. I don't need to win this. No, he didn't give up. And this is something you're going to give him credit for. And that's something I'm missing with many new athletes. Just because it doesn't look like you're winning, you still got to be trying. You cannot give up, other than having some health issues. You just don't. Let's look at the negatives, because there are some with Drysdale and would like to point them out. The first one mentioned is that his blades are simply too deep at the catch. The problem is with deep blades at the catch, essentially you are creating a bounce. You are artificially creating more slip on the blade. And there is scientific evidence for that, and common sense says the same thing. It's perceived to be a better lock, but it's only perception. It's deceiving. You have to think about it this way. The only way you generate resistance is horizontally. This is how the blade is built. It's built like a shovel. So the deeper you go, the longer you create slip. So essentially, if my hand were the blade, water would be slipping above and below it, especially when it's moving. So the goal at the catch is to place it where it would naturally rest and hold it there. This is where the Rendell foil, which is a plastic strip you attach to the top of your oar, helps you to feel this, because oars are not designed to make you feel this, but they should be designed to make you feel that. And if you let the blades rest in the water quicker, so there's less up and down motion, you have a much faster pickup of force. There is scientific evidence for this, and you find it on rendellfoils.com. The University of Porto has made an extensive study, super interesting. I recommend you go and read this. I'll leave a link to the website in the description of this video. The next thing why deep blades create an issue is that they change your handle height. See this? His hands are already pretty high, and I like high hands because this is a very natural flow of energy. If you had to pull, this is how high your hands would be. However, I think this boat simply had to be rigged a bit higher. I personally believe this boat is rigged too low. But again, I'm not Mahe Drysdale, I'm not Olympic champion in the single, and I certainly didn't win the Diamond Sculls final at the Henley Royal Regatta. So the one who wins is right, but it's not the case that you should copy everything a winner does. A winner is not perfect, and it's better to copy the things that are good that I mentioned before. This is something I recommend you do not copy. And if you see the slight bit of upper body motion change, it's because his blades go too deep. Does he look out? Is this a problem? No. Experienced rowers are able to look around wherever they want, and they should not catch a crab. I honestly think the typical Italian high-performance rower looks more out of the boat than inside the boat, and they're winning a lot. I mentioned the possible lack of pelvic mobility, and I'm 100% sure about this. If you look at the body position here, he's trying to bend forward what he can bend forward, and the point he can bend forward is the upper back. It does have the positive side effect that his lats are super well engaged right from the start. However, the low back here is immobile. It takes the entire load, and it's not designed to do this, and therefore there's a bit of an upper body motion, and I think this might have caused a bit of back pain, possible back injury. I'm not friends with Mahe Drysdale, so I don't know his personal story, but most rowers who've got this kind of back, it is straight, that is true, it is not bent, but it's not a healthy position in the long run. It's possible that some rowers row like this their entire life, are extremely successful, but these are exceptions. And your name, very likely, is not Mahe Drysdale. Now we come to the last point that is a negative with Mahe Drysdale. It's the finish. Here at the finish, you see his shoulders go back a lot. Not extremely, but more than I recommend they should. For you to copy. Not for him to change. For you to copy. I recommend you do not copy the shoulders going back so far, because it brings your chest out and it stiffens up the top section of the core, and it takes away control from the low section of the core. And that is exactly what we see here. I know from experience the people who row like this have a lack of deep muscle control. At the finish, the most important thing for you to do is try to pull your trunk long. Try to make it long. Why is it important to make it long? Because this allows you to engage the transverse abdominis, amongst many other deep muscles. And these deep muscles actually function as a substitute for a bone structure that we are lacking in the core. So if you want to transfer a lot of force at the finish, and even though your legs are not pushing anymore, they're still transferring force between your foot stretchers and your body. You should have your deep muscles under control. And Drysdale, I'm very sure, doesn't have them as much under control as Kjetil Borch does. Now, let's look at the positives and negatives of Kjetil Borch. Let's look at the positives of Kjetil Borch. You see the finish position is extremely composed. Very, very good upper body control. So precisely the problem that I perceive Drysdale had, and that you should not copy, that lack of upper body control, is something that Borch doesn't have. If we look at his finish position here, this is picture perfect. It almost seems like his This is the start phase of Henley. It almost seems like he's slightly pushing his abs out. Maybe that wasn't a cue he was following, but whatever he did, there was good upper body stability. Another thing, you can see the shoulders are actually protracted. They are in a forward-facing position. I think this is a very good thing to do because your arms and your shoulders are not really involved in anything that would be a decent pull at the finish. Your main work is with the upper body. And this is what Kjetil Borch has under great control. So if you want to copy something, copy Kjetil Borch's upper body control at the finish and the positive lack of excessive arm pull. The next great thing is that Borch is able to bend his oars around mid-drive. Look at these shafts. Extremely well bent. Not that Drysdale doesn't do this, but even though Borch isn't using much upper body swing at the finish, he still has a bit of his peak force left around mid-drive, which is where the blades are in the best possible angle to propel the boat. It cannot possibly be any better. Could he extend that phase if he didn't cut the upper body swing short? Maybe, but I'm actually not too sure. In my first video analysis, I said that Borch's upper body use at the finish was too short. I don't think so anymore. What I do think, however, is that Borch didn't have his upper body under control at the catch. If you look at his weight distribution on the way forward, you see that his knees bend quite early, and that at this stage here, he's still not done bringing the upper body forward. At that stage, for you, if you want to copy anything, don't copy that specific motion. The upper body angle, or the inner hip angle, let's put it this way, the angle of your thighs to your upper body, can be closed either from your legs because you quote-unquote slide forward more, or it can be closed from your upper body leaning forward more. The problem is if you use your upper body to lean forward more as you approach the catch, what happens is that you put a lot of weight on the hands. Now, if you put weight on your hands, you effectively put weight on your handles. Now, here's the pin. If you push down here, the blade will go up. If your intention is, however, to get the blade closer to the water, you have contradictory intentions. And that's a dilemma. And I think this is a very simple problem that Borch had. On the way to the catch, his blades were too close to the water, and now they're going up. The blade work is something I'm pretty sure he worked on extensively, and he still is one of the best rowers in the world. So it's not to say that he didn't row well. For him, this made perfect sense. He became world champion that year. He was the fastest rower in the world in the single scull. But for you to look at and say, I'm going to row exactly like him, be careful. Not everything a world champion does is actually good. And what he is doing is despite the fact that he's able to raise his arms to get the blades into the water, and that is perfect. And I'm pretty sure this is a motion he must have practiced many thousand times. This is perfect. However, the moment he starts to apply force, you see, he immediately goes up with the upper body. Why is this a problem? Actually, it is not a problem per se, unless it makes your blade go deeper into the water. I just talked about this with Mahe Drysdale. The deeper your blade goes, the more slip you have on the blade. So the goal is to stabilize the blade. If you want to have a stable blade at the catch, you got to have a stable hand. And if you want to have stable hands, you got to have a stable lat and a stable torso, at least fairly stable. There's nothing wrong with using the upper body a bit at the catch, provided you can still have enough upper body stability at the finish. This is not the issue. The issue is what it creates with your upper body motion. And at that stage here, he's using the upper body very early, and therefore he cuts the upper body use at the finish short. You can also see the way he exits is with quite a long washout. Realistically, the exit of your blades here is always going to be a washout, but it could be a bit less. So my advice for you, if you want to copy anything, try to hold the knees down a bit longer than Borch does. And at that stage, don't drop your upper body weight onto your knees anymore. It restricts the space you have for your lungs, and it also makes you very handle heavy, let's put it that way. And therefore, the catch takes you a very long time. Just too long. It slows down the entire catch process. Now, if you look at Borch's real-time speed here, it looks like the catch takes a very long time. The boat is gliding, but there's almost a bit of a stop, and it looks like he's using his upper body unnecessarily at the catch up and down. There's too much vertical motion. Let's go back and look at this once more. Too much vertical motion. I mean, on a general basis, this is awesome. The way he propels the boat with his upper body weight is just gigantic. And he's got this huge physiology and these massive shoulders. He looks so unimpressed. It looks impressive. But there are these fine details that you should not copy. Copy the position he's got at the finish. Copy the stoic look. Copy the composed body posture. All of that you can copy. But not the one thing where he bends his knees early and dips his upper body weight onto his knees. So the question is, which technique is better? Honestly, I do not think that technique had much to do with the outcome of this race. I think it was more a matter of how fit these athletes were, how much they peaked for it, how important it was to them. I think that has more to do with anything else. Because Borch became world champion later on, and Drysdale might have peaked for that, might have not peaked for that, I'm not sure. And we had two of the best athletes in the world racing. By the way, one thing. You know what's great about Henley Royal Regatta? I'm not trying to make an advertisement for them. Kjetil Borch was Red Bull sponsored. And Red Bull doesn't pay a lot of money usually, but they provide you with excellent services that help you to excel as an athlete. There was this instant where Borch made a medal at one of the World Cups, I think it was somewhere in Italy, and he had to give back his medal because he drank from a bottle that had a Red Bull logo on it. Like many other people, I found this highly questionable, not of Borch, but the fact that he had to return his medal and there were some other consequences. This is exactly what is not helpful for the sport of rowing. And I think Kjetil Borch was right to use his Red Bull bottle. I don't think he even did it intentionally. And these harsh consequences were really not well thought out. And the fact that Kjetil Borch is able to wear his Red Bull head, is able to wear his sponsor logos at a very big international event speaks volumes for Henley Royal Regatta. And I think this is one of the reasons why this regatta will be relevant for many, many, many years to come. Oh yeah, full disclosure, I'm not sponsored by Red Bull. So technique summary. What's best? Both styles have their advantages and disadvantages. I think Kjetil Borch's style is very good for the first half of the race, maybe for the first 2/3 of a race. But when you want to build speed, you probably need to use a bit more upper body towards the finish. And that is exactly what I would like you to do with me. So in my best workout clothes, I will hop on a BioRower Pro now and try to show you what the difference is and try to do row along, play along. And then I will cut a clip of maybe 2-3 minutes of each athlete of Borch and Drysdale showing what they can do best, what you should copy, and that you can try and row along with them. Check it out. I'm in balance mode, so you see a force by angle curve on the left and a force by angle curve on the right. So this essentially gives you a good idea of the symmetry, but also the overall shape of the stroke. Let's row the Mahe Drysdale style first. So very straight upper body, bends forward a lot here, is like this at the catch, therefore has his lats pre-engaged and are pre-stretched. This is actually very good. What you should change is that you go from here to that. I don't know if you can see this from this angle. Protracted lats, and instead of trying to get all the bend here, try to do this. Stabilizes the low back. It's a pelvic rotation forward. But let's row like Drysdale does. Here, like that. I exaggerate. And what you can already see, this is a style that is backloaded. That means I got a lot of momentum going around pin and here, which is good. This is effective. It is fast. What I did not take into consideration was the handle height change. So this. So you end up with a curve that looks like a tooth. And I'm pretty sure this is more the typical Drysdale curve if you try to imitate him in his rowing style. Borch, on the other hand side, does this. He leans forward a bit now. He starts with a very stable finish position. Leans forward a bit now. More. Jump. And ever so more as he comes to the catch. And then opens and is straight. You can see that my stroke is a bit shorter, but the curve overall is a bit more rectangular. Let's try this again. I have to imitate this. Yeah, a very nice plateau, and this looks excellent in low steady state. The question is, if you do this at full load for a 2K or longer, like in Henley. Let's compare these curves once more in higher stroke rates, and I try my very best to imitate the basics. Of course, I have my own style, and it's very difficult for me to imitate that, but I recommend you try this. So, Drysdale. Look at the catch angle. It's about 65 degrees. Let's do the Borch style once more. So you can see it's longer at the catch and there is more body mass behind zero. And this is very good if you want to be sustainable. Borch style is very good for the mid part of a race and the early stage of a race. The thing is that a 2K or the Henley distance is not a sprint at all. It requires sustainability. Your technique is going to serve you when you come into anaerobic steady state. That means that per mole of glucose that the body sources from its depots, only 2 mole of ATP are being sourced. Versus when you're aerobic, you source about 32 usable mole of ATP per mole of glucose. What this means is that the energy yield before you come into that, let's say, last half of the race, or for some athletes, even the last 2/3 of a race is a much better one. And you can play more with the weight in a more intellectual way, let's put it that way. The moment you come to being fatigued, being completely deprived of energy, but knowing that there's not much for you to sprint, but there is a hard sprint coming up, so a short distance, but a hard distance, using upper body weight, if you have trained this, is very effective because your stroke rate cannot really go up unless you are Romanian. Your stroke rate is limited, and there is only so many meters per stroke you can do at 45 or 40 plus. But if you're able to get a lot of meters per stroke, which Drysdale does, despite its limitation in the pelvic range of motion, throwing the upper body back is quite effective. What is not effective with him is that he moves the shoulders back because it takes him a long time to come forward. If we could match these two styles into using that protracted lats at the catch and leaning back, but being tall, keeping the shoulders forward, that would be perfect. But again, that's up to you to create that for yourself. So at the finish, trying to sit up, shoulders forward, and yes, lean back over the second half of the race. Now let's do a drill that I did with my Saturday class. So you can structure a race in such a way that you do 1,000 meters at a Borch style, and over the last 1,000 you slowly come to a Drysdale style. By that I mean you row for the first half conservatively. And when it comes to sprinting, you start to do this. And you have to be able to increase your stroke length a tiny bit without lacking cleanliness, let's put it that way. So your knees still should hold down. And that's a drill we did on one of the Saturdays, where we said, okay, you're gonna row it with me, 30 seconds, upright style, 15 seconds, massive upper body use. Okay, you ready? Let's go. Upper body. Knees down. Feel the change? So what we can learn from that is that you have to be able to adapt. Don't be too stubborn in your style and say, oh, I always roll like this. I always roll like that. Change your style. Use different length. Use different body dynamics, but hold your knees down, especially when you become tired. Here, hold your knees down until your pelvis has had time to rock over. And a structure you can try, especially if you are an explosive athlete, try to go 1,000 meters, pretty straight, stable upper body, save your energy, but stay with the pack. For the third 500, try to use a bit more upper body at the finish, but hold your knees down on the recovery. Be clean, don't lose connection. In the last 500, you go for a sprint with the upper body. And for some athletes, this works wonders. Now, I will edit 1 or 2 or 3 minutes of Drysdale and Borch now, so you can row along at their race pace, and you can try to imitate Borch's stability at the finish and Drysdale's wonderful hold at the catch and upper body use at the finish. But don't copy the things that I warned you about before. With that being said, I draw my hat to 2 of the very best rowers I've ever seen and the world has ever seen, and I hope we all, as a community of rowers, can learn what we could imitate and how we can progress as individual rowers, juniors, masters, under 23s, even national team athletes. With that being said, aramtraining.com is my website. This is where you find me. I hold a lot of rowing camps in Vienna, and I do live Zoom classes for people around the world. I write training plans. I do one-on-one sessions. That's the coaching. And if you want to learn more about this beautiful piece of art that protects your back and it's just more fun to row and it's much healthier for your back, this is a Biro Pro, the world's best rowing machine, and I'm not a salesperson. Have a very good day. I'll see you in the next video. Like and subscribe and share this video. Thank you. Bye-bye.